Welcome to another bite-sized learning of Terraform. Today we're going to be looking at something called conditional expressions. Conditional expressions are really useful in the world of Terraform because they give you the ability to define resources or values on an if-then case. This is a very common thing to do in a lot of programming languages. This is how you handle it inside of Terraform. Uh, you're going to define some sort of expressional condition that evaluates to true or false. And then the true is going to be the first section after the question mark, and the colon is going to be what happens if the value is false. I have a little example project here that I'm gonna demonstrate this kind of hands-on for you how this works. So I have created this really basic project. The only provider that I'm going to be using is the random provider, and the idea is that I'm going to allow somebody to provide an ID. If they do not provide an ID, then I'm going to generate one for them, and I'm going to output the result of that ID into the command line. So the random resource has been imported. In the main or in the variables, I have this variable called bring your own ID, BYO ID, with a description that it's an ID to assign to a resource. If you have a preference, will auto create if none provided. And it just defaults to an empty string. What we're going to do is combine this conditional if then statement in two different places. The first thing that we're going to do with it is we're going to define a random string. We're going to use the metadata called count. I've covered this in another video where it is the number of instances of a resource to create. And what we're going to do is use a really cool trick where we can evaluate an expression like, hey, if the length of this variable string is greater than 0, then I do not want this resource to exist. I want the count of the resource to be 0. If the length is less than 0 or less than or equal to 0, then I want to create this random ID. As you can see here, I've run a plan and apply without providing any override for the BYO ID. And it says, hey, I'm going to generate a random string, and the selected output will be known after the apply. In the output section, I have the same exact evaluation that we have for the count. And I say if the length of BYOD is greater than 0, then I just want to output the ID that we provided. Otherwise, if it's false, then I want to provide the output of the random string name. You may be asking yourself, well, why do you have to do this? So when you use count is very interesting in that it creates an array of resources. Because I have used count either statically creating one instance or no instances, if it exists, and I know that it exists if this condition evaluates false, then I need to look up the first index or the 0 index of the name random string resource, and I want the result of that. I know that this exists because I conditionally set this to exist based on this statement here. So I'm going to run a Terraform apply and we're going to see what happens. So I'm not going to provide anything for the input value. I'm just going to hit enter. Oops, I'm sorry. Yes. The selected ID is now this generated ID, right? That's awesome. The next thing that I'm going to do is, for the sake of this, I'm just going to actually change this default to something else. What I would normally do is just supply this as a flag on the plan, but for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to change the default. Sorry. So you can see here that what this is going to do is it's going to destroy what I have already created because I supplied a new value. And because I supplied a new value, my conditional expression for random string becomes true. The length of the ID is greater than 0. So it's going to destroy the random string that I originally created, and instead it's going to output the my value selected ID. There's a lot of use cases for this, and we use this very heavily in an enterprise setting because there are times we want things to exist and there are times that we don't. And a lot of times we use these flags or variables as kind of feature gates to create or not create something. Very useful feature. Make sure that you understand how conditional expressions work. We use these a lot when it comes to counts for resources and outputs. It's not limited to that though. I mean, you can even do things like changing if it's special or not, or the length. Maybe you have a different variable that says you care about the length or not, and you can conditionally supply different lengths of these things based on your pseudo condition. Um, and I don't have a variable here, but I care about length. Let's say that I have a variable called I care about length, right? If I care about length, then I want to supply, the length of 16. And if you don't care about length, maybe you want it to be an 8. These are valid things to do for really any attribute. You can make any attribute conditional that you want. We just tend to use it the most when it comes to counts. If you appreciated this video, this educational video about how conditional expressions work and how we would use them in an example with a count of a resource, I hope that you would give this video a like and that you will subscribe. And I will be back in the very near future with more Terraform bite-sized learning content. Thank you very much and have an excellent day. Merry Christmas.